So welcome to the Authentic Marketing panel. My name is Glenn Alderson. I'm a Calgary expat, so I'm the moderator today. I think maybe it's important to start with some introductions just for context, so everybody knows who you're looking and listening to. So for perspective, I grew up in Calgary. I was born and raised here, grew up in the all ages punk scene. I started a magazine fresh out of university. I graduated and started a magazine called Beetroot, which was a street paper that was kind of committed to amplifying local music and arts and culture in the city, kind of in a response to just the fact that the weeklies that were existing here weren't really speaking to my friends and my colleagues. So I started actually with one of my instructors who taught me in school, and together for 15 years we ran Beetroot. We eventually expanded it into BC and then slowly into Toronto. In 2000 it was acquired by another company and who I worked with to try and sort of massage out what an expansion would look like, but ultimately ended up parting ways, and then I launched a new magazine in 2001 called Range Magazine. So I'm based in Vancouver, and Range Magazine is my current sort of focus. It's a national arts and culture magazine that focuses on the amplification of musicians and communities across the country. I have writers and editors stationed in Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. We also do an annual showcase at South by Southwest every year that sort of invites Canadian artists to come and perform on an international stage. We publish a quarterly print edition and daily content online through our website, which is readrange.com. But I'm joined here by Heather Sate here on the far end. Heather's an award-winning photographer and art director. For more than 20 years, she's been merging her skills to create highly conceptual visual work, rich in both pop culture, context, and character. Her photography has been published both commercially and editorially across Canada, and she's worked in several ad agencies and design firms to art direct campaigns from start to finish. A good portion of her work these days consists of creative photography, art direction, and video direction/production for musicians and artists. I can also speak on knowing Heather for almost 20 years, which is a pillar of the local community, and you also are one of the founders of Idolize, which is a local art collective /studio, host events and stuff. So.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add here?
No, got lots of hands and lots of pots, as they say. So, but it all kind of comes back to, I guess, being a visual artist and what that means.
Cool. Thank you. So next to my immediate right here is Rena Esfritu. So Rena's been a champion for the sustainability of Canadian arts and culture. For over a decade, she's provided mentorship to Toronto-based arts organizations serving racialized and marginalized communities, guided by the question, who's it for? Her approach is informed by a career built on audience-facing experiences, including concert production and promotion, print and digital publishing, and product development. Today, she's a proud member of the Artistic Advisory Board for Venus Festival, which is very cool. I love Venus Festival. I've written about it a few times. Can you tell us a bit more about Venus Fest? Just for
Yeah, Venus Fest is a Toronto-based music festival. It's 3 days long. It started about 6 or 7 years ago. People compared it to Lilith Fair. I might be dating myself by saying that, but if anyone remembers Lilith Fair, it was a lot of women, singer-songwriter, but the programming has since changed. So Erin Fogel was the originating artistic director. She has passed the baton to a new artistic director, Ape Elmirmo, is a current band member of a band called Phaedra. Maybe you might recognize, I don't know if you know who they Fang. Oh, I see some nods, that's great. Ape is an incredible new force, and Erin and her have worked really closely together this past year. So I think it's going into its 7th year. We've expanded the programming to include not just women and singer-songwriter, but more experimental music, genre-less music, targeting queer, trans, non-binary folks as well. So it's still 3 days, 3 acts a day. We are expanding it into a marketplace as well. So we had local radio stations, like college radio stations, as well as like moral support. If you ever heard of this company as well, like this marketplace is really growing. And so next year we're looking forward to filling in more of the spots for the 3 nights. There are usually 3 headliners and 2 acts before that. It's a great night. And yeah.
And what are the dates for the 2024 programming?
The dates, it's September, late
Cool.
September, so after. We don't want any of that.
So as you can see, I think there's like 3 pretty broad perspectives that, sitting up here, like to discuss, authentic marketing. And I realize we're in a room of, music industry professionals and artists, and I'm just curious to sort of start things off by a show of hands, like how many people in the room are musicians?
Yeah.
Cool, and for, like publicists? No publicists in the room, okay. And like people who work on the label and agency side? Right on, cool. Well, thanks for joining us. It's like a true honor to be here, and I think what Music Calgary's pulled together for the Sound Off Summit is really special. So we kind of outlined a few of the outcomes that we wanted to have, like, come out of this conversation, which we'll try and keep it as fluid and like entertaining as possible. But we're here to talk about authentic marketing and what that means, in terms of current trends in social media and marketing, and how you can represent yourself as like an artist or an entity, a small business, a brand, and just sort of explore, I guess, just different ways to communicate with your potential audience, which is it's kind of a never-ending question of just you're constantly navigating this scheme.
Existential? Is that the word?
Existential, yeah, exactly.
Marketing, existential marketing?
We want to identify strategies for artists to utilize and engage with the tools, and talk about, sort of tools they have at their disposal to communicate with their target audience. So I think let's just start off with a question, and we can kind of break from there. But
And open the floor maybe too.
and open the floor too.
Please.
Like, feel free to interject. I think it's really cool to be able to bounce off of everyone in here, because everyone's coming from their own cool perspective. So the first thing that I sort of thought of when we're talking about authentic marketing is like, what does it mean to be authentic? We're talking about marketing in the first place. And that's like through story, image, presentation, both online and on the stage if you're an artist. So tapping into authentic voice through various assets around your music is necessary, but how do you know you're being authentic? I was hoping maybe I could ask you guys to share a bit of insight into your own experiences regarding the art of being yourself.
Yeah, I mean, today in this panel, a lot of my knowledge is, I have a degree in marketing from York University. I did that after I went to school for photography because I wanted to get into the world of art direction. So I do obviously know the fundamentals of like analytics and speaking to the right audience and copywriting and all of those things, but when I speak about things today for myself personally, it's mostly from a visual side of things. So visually, how do you make yourself authentic? That's a really good question. For me, I think it comes down to one of the first things I do as a photographer when a band contacts me to shoot their new promo photos or their new album cover is I go and listen to their music. Because you're not going to photograph a punk band in the same way that you're going to photograph a jazz band, right? There might be some overlapping of techniques or something, but the authenticity of that image is going to come out visually based on what that band stands for, even at a high level musically. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think authenticity is the magnification of whatever connects you to your work is what will connect your audience with your work and you. So if you can find a way to magnify that, and whether that comes through, I love the idea also that it's visual, because especially in the social media age, so much of it is visual, being fed so many things. So what's going to stop somebody from scrolling and allowing the music to play, or the gallery to be swiped through?
Yeah.
So that you're absolutely right. There's got to be that click, which is rooted in that connection. I'll leave it there because I see a hand.
I'm just wondering how much like the local aesthetic should play a point when you're doing photographs for like different niches of artists. For like example, like here, there's like a lot of prairie and stuff, and like I see a lot of like rock bands and just like bands standing in grass stands. I'm like, it's just not the look. You know? So like, how do you like escape that, or how do you take that into consideration when you're doing photography for these like different niches, or any sort of aesthetic, like visual art stuff?
I mean, I personally have photographed country musicians in that type of setting, and you do it on 35mm film, so it gets like really sort of grainy and it gets this vibe to it. But just on a very, the number two thing I do is, after I decide to work with a band, is I will usually put together a Pinterest board, which I know that sounds really lame, like then you go to Pinterest, but it's so helpful.
Yeah.
It's so helpful because then it can be like, no, like, you know, let's take this a step further. You know, you're a metal band, we're not gonna photograph you on the Peace Bridge, that's not cool. Here's some examples visually, because it's really easy for me to get up here and be like, oh, you know, no, it's cool, just go to Pinterest and put together some visual ideas, but not everyone is a visual person. So that's really hard to get across, and so I have to remember that to me that comes really naturally, but some people have a hard time doing that. And so how do you become an authentic, how do you market your band authentically if you don't even know what like your image is? Yeah.
It is hit or miss too, though, because I've definitely seen people use their grant money and use money out of their pocket and work towards working on the image first before really getting to the core of their work. So like maybe they've got this amazing photo shoot, but like they don't have the sonic experience to back it up, right? And a lot of people are listening to music off of their phones, so when you're swiping through, they're hearing that. So it's almost like audio production comes second, and if you're all musicians, it should be first. It should absolutely be first. That will follow. You'll meet more people like Heather who will be able to amplify that. But
yes,
first and foremost, authenticity is about the sound. So a lot of people, especially in an emerging part of their career, it can be confusing, but it's so exciting because this is the part where you get to merge those two worlds, the visual with your sonic. So that's my take as a huge music fan. Sometimes I will see an Instagram feed or Twitter or any of it, like where somebody's showing themselves off a little bit, and I'm like, this doesn't match the show that I just saw. Like there's such a disconnect. So again, I bring it back to connection.
Yeah.
There's some really cool voices that I've really enjoyed that I feel are truly authentic. I'm just going to give an example. Feel free to look them up. But like Robin Hatch, I don't know if any of you are familiar. Yeah, so her voice, politically, emotionally, personally, artistically, all kind of come together. She's a Leafs fan. She's got hyper-political views. She's not afraid to speak her mind. She made an album on Tonto across the street. I feel like I'm alongside her on her career. I do love her photography as well. I don't know who does it, but I do think she merges that really well. Sorry, go ahead.
You're talking about kind of all the things that go about presenting yourself as a person rather than just being the artist. How far do you go with that? Because obviously Robin Hatch is somebody who, like you mentioned, full political online. Obviously that's not usually recommended.
No.
Where is that line of like how much you should include of like your personal views and kind of what your lifestyle is versus how much you should do that?
That's your boundary to choose. There isn't, I can't blanket statement back for any 5 people. You know what I mean? Like, you need to find your threshold on what you're comfortable sharing. Maybe you've seen a lot of people do behind, this is more kind of geared to marketing, less political, just to give some context. You see some artists that'll give you behind the scenes of everything, right? I'm working on this video, I'm working on here's me, all along the way, real time. By the time they release any work, like a single, you've seen it all. There was no mystique, there was no build-up, right? You spoon-fed your audience the whole way through, And I would say more than the political threshold is to think about how much of yourself you're giving away too soon.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also think that in this day, and this is where the authenticity comes in, is that it's nice to show a little bit of the behind the scenes rather than just always having, and it's nice to be silly and it's nice to show your flaws and it's nice to, you know, maybe show like a really awkward, terrible day that you just had in the studio. Like, I think that those things combined with a really slick social media presence are what contribute to being an authentic presence. Yeah, because people are not, we don't want all that super polished stuff anymore, right? You want a little bit of it, but...
That's a really good point. Coming from like a media perspective and like an editor whose inbox is constantly filled, you know, with hundreds of emails a day from people saying, you should cover my band. What do I have to do to get on the cover? It's like, you know, we're really talking about filtering through all these different narratives, and it is aesthetics, you know, and very important, but it's also, you know, this sort of story through line that you can kind of, you really want it to, like, you want it to break through, right? You're trying to break through the noise. You're trying to get the attention of an editor, maybe a Pitchfork or Exclaim, and trying to get them, you know, like, write about my band, pay attention. I think we're cool. I think you should too, and we want to build a fan base. But like all of those things need to sort of be kept into, you know, kept in mind while you're creating this greater image. And like, you know, with that, like a solo artist, I find it's interesting because the solo artist can have a photo and shoot it wherever they want, wherever they happen to be, like a Charlotte Cardin, right? Who could create beautiful press photos and exist all over the world, seemingly all at once. But for bands, you know, like how many people play in bands here as opposed to solo artist stuff? Like communicating one collective vision, I think, is super interesting, and you know, trying to like break. Like I constantly struggle with, like, you know, for instance, on our digital cover this month is a Montreal-based band called Chose Sauvage, where I had a photographer in Montreal shoot them, and I sort of was going back and forth about concepts and ideas, and like, how are we going to package these 5 white dudes on the cover? Like something that we don't do often, right? But I was like, we got to give this band like some love because they're playing a showcase that we're presenting next week in Montreal for M for Montreal. And it was just like this whole constant, like, sort of like battle internally where we're like, okay, like how can we package this band to make them like visually appealing and communicate their narrative, which is actually quite cool, you know, so.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you?
I was just gonna ask, in the format of authenticity, I find in myself, and maybe I can ask you guys, like, as creators as well, like, I find that I learn a lot from my creation and my songs, but at the same time, I want to be authentic and kind of post. So, like, I guess my question would be, how far ahead of your creative are you, or do you want to be? Is there a sweet spot, or is it better to live right? Like, okay, I'm in this right now. It's the most authentic I can be. Let me post or let me release here. For me, I've found that I've really been, it's almost like therapeutic to be creating art and learning from it, but then I find that I'm actually at a different place than where I'm actually releasing and posting.
Right.
So like, how do you manage that?
Do you feel anxious, like when you're like thinking about like, oh, I'm doing this really cool thing and I want to like put it out there, or should I save this for when the single drops? Or
Yeah.
And that's really hard because you could be in a totally different mindset, right? And then you're like stuck living this like life that you were 3 months ago, right?
Yeah, like I find out if I had posted it or released it, that song at that time, it would have been maybe more authentic. But I've learned my lesson, and now I'm in a totally different mindset. I'm working on other stuff, but I still like, so my perspective of that project maybe is shifted a little. So I'm going to be a little less authentic, a little more cheesy, because I have a different idea, you know? So
Well, is it authentic though if you're like, okay, should I post this and be more authentic here? Or will it be more authentic if I post it then? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or
I
just slow your
think-
roll and like maybe be like, what's my through line here? Like, you know, the song, the story, the narrative, the message that you're trying to communicate. create assets, that sort of build up to it. Like,
Yeah.
as an artist, it's so hard sometimes. You're like, I love this song. Everyone needs to hear this right now. But then you get like, one artist who reached out to us recently was like, I have a single, but I'm waiting 2 months to drop the video because I want to stagger it. And you don't want, you want to have all this content to be mindful of people consuming. But like for me, from a media perspective, I'm like, give me the video, like, give us something more to like, connect to, because the song is just X person playing X music, and I have not,
Yeah. I think when I shoot stuff for people, and I do a lot, most of the photography that I produce is for social media. That's what people want. So when we go into the studio, we're either producing visuals for a number of things. They just want like some general cool content to help them like talk about upcoming shows, to talk about, just general stuff to post on social media and be like, hey guys, I'm still alive. Like, guess what? There's a new album coming out. And then I will also get contracted to shoot album cover stuff, which is obviously a whole nother, that sometimes ends up in print, which is nice. But then the other of that is that I shoot artwork for singles. So, for instance, when I was in Toronto in May, I did a shoot for a country band out there called Nicolette and the Nobodies. And that was in May, and their album is coming out really soon. But they've been sitting on those images since May, waiting to release them, because the sole purpose of that photo shoot that we did in Toronto was to help unleash the album when it finally comes out. And there's been a lot of production delays, and I think they got a new member of the band. I'm not even sure. That's fine, because we just shot the lead singer, so none of that had to change. But the sole purpose of those images is to do this blitz. Not only PR, but also online. So yeah.
It would, if I can add on that, is to kind of find this, you mentioned a sweet spot. The sweet spot is your own, you or your team or your band or yourself, to find that kind of intuition with strategy. Try to find that strategy. And a simple thing, very simple, I'm just going to throw a very old school marketing model to you, is called the sales funnel. And essentially it's this shape, you'll see if you ever talk to anybody who's ever worked in sales and marketing, it's this upside down triangle shaped like a cone, and at the top it says awareness, and at the center it says interest, and then the second last thing is decision, and the last thing is action. So every asset that you have, there's this idea of Nicolette, right? Like the blitz. They probably have their social, that's where awareness is. You're getting people just generally aware, right? They're generally aware. Maybe you release one single. Maybe that's sonically where you capture the interest, right? They like the sound. Then you might have a show coming up. So now you're posting something where they have to make a decision. Do I want to spend money on it? Then the action is that they did buy a ticket. So if you consider each of your assets or each of the things that you do feel intuitive about, that you're going to have all this, you're going to get pictures taken of all different sorts. It's going to be doled out over time, maybe for a single, then an EP, then a tour, right? This is basically what a label will do for you. But if you're starting and you're doing it all on your own, it's interesting to think about things more in these steps. Instead of, like, I love that you're thinking that much, right?
Yeah.
Just don't overburden yourself. I also love what you said about, like, is it authentic if you're overburdened by it in this way?
But it's good to have a strategy. So I think that what you're trying to get at is a little bit is like a strategy. Like, when should I release this song? When is it going to get the most traction? When are people going to be most interested in it? You know what I mean? They even say that there's times that you should like post on social media that are like the highest, that have the biggest. So I think it's not a matter of I think of having a strategy as an artist, even a little bit of strategy, even if it's just in your brain, is a good thing.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, like, who you were when you wrote the work, and when it comes out. To your point, so many things can happen in between.
Yeah.
I have so many friends and people in my life that create a work, and by the time it comes out, they're over it. They're so, but by the time they get the marketing funding from Factor or whoever, or that by the time that all comes together, they're like, and now I've got to tour this.
Yeah.
You know, I know I mean, you could, like, and it depends on how you feel about it, but, you know, you are the artist, that is your art, you'll find a way to get that together. You had a question, so I don't want to forget what that was.
No worries.
Oh, it's, yeah, are you sure?
I'm going to hold on to it.
Okay.
But I
It
do
better be
like,
good.
I love the art of like documenting your journey is also part of the authentic process,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
I
I think
agree.
like, I don't know if anybody follows Snotty Nose Res Kids
Yes.
on Instagram, but like I love watching them because it's like you're winning, all of their accomplishments, you're feeling with them. And anytime they're in the studio, they're like, got another hit, you know, they're watching basketball in the background.
Love that.
They're like engaging with each other, like in just being like funny and like
Yeah.
themselves and cool. And they've had, you know, such an immense rise in the last 2 years. And for fans who've been like their day ones, you know, it's like they're winning with them as they go. And I think
It's tricky though, right? Because Snotty Nose Res Kids are pretty extroverted, and not all musicians
They
are.
are,
Not all
totally.
musicians are.
Yeah.
So I huge fan. So huge fan of them. Love the content. Problematic word for some. I do enjoy what they put out there. But there is that art where I know like they're incredible artists that you almost don't think they speak because everything that they do is like a photo of them like playing beautifully and like you can hear their music, but they don't have that personality. So
It's a
I guess
good
it
point.
does depend. It does depend, I guess, right?
yeah, and sort of charting what, like you said earlier, boundaries and talking about the aesthetic that you want to curate. But if the aesthetic is naturally, you know, introverted and soft-spoken and, you know, then the people who love introverted, soft-spoken music, that could,
Yeah, I'm thinking of
Potentially.
somebody, Charlotte Cornfield, the other Charlotte.
yeah, very.
They're much. She's super quiet, but like her music is like, you know, you can connect with it. She doesn't talk a lot. She doesn't do it, but she shows behind the scenes stuff.
And when she,
Yeah.
didn't she just had a baby?
baby.
Yeah,
So,
I
like,
love seeing
She
that.
kind of took people
Yeah.
on that journey
Yes.
through, through
Nice.
the odd grid posts, and you get to kind of see.
Yeah.
But quietly,
for her.
again, it's like she doesn't speak, right? It's like she's the quietest baby.
Yeah. Some people like getting their picture taken, other people, you know, rather hide behind masks, and that's
Or
a whole
artwork,
aesthetic.
or
itself.
artwork, right? Yeah.
Anyway.
I suppose this might be a bit more of a nebulous question, you kind of just going back on what you were touching on, but it feels like a lot of the time as an artist, you're putting together stuff, you're assembling, you know, recordings, packages, whatever, and then you are sitting in limbo waiting for it to eventually come down the line, like just timeline things don't always work out the way you want them to.
Yes.
And I was curious, do you have like experience, or like what your experiences are with, like what do you do when you're marketing something that's like so far behind, but it still needs to get an audience, you know? Like what does it feel like when you're way ahead of something and you still need people to care about it? You need to care about it. Like what do you, like how do you navigate that kind of challenge, you know? I feel like that's maybe a pretty broad question, but.
Like in terms of motivation, I'm trying to.
Well, motivation and also, like, motivation perhaps on the end of, like, the person like marketing it, but then how do you, like, bring that kind of authenticity to it, you know, when you're trying to, like people's attention span seems to be, if it didn't just come out, if it's not just about to happen, then I don't care about it, you know?
So, 2 questions, and you can shout out the answer, but these are rhetorical. Why are you doing it, and who is it for? Those are the big, like, those are, for me, often, like, even if it's for you, if you're like, this is for me, right? That makes it authentic. If it's for somebody else, if it's for an audience, then you cater it to that. The when of it, personally, I would go back to the marketing funnel of like the when. Is it because you want people to be aware? Do you want them to be interested? Do you want them to decide on something? Do you want an action? Or are you just putting something out there, slice of life? Like as we were talking about, Snotty Nose Res Kids have been doing, like they give a real bit behind the scenes. But the why and the who is it for, I think, you know, like because that's not this, the question you sound, and please let me know if this is correct, is it less about the marketing and about what to post?
Like what to do.
What to do.
When you have a stall and it's like, but I'm supposed to have this album coming out, but now it's stalled.
To keep people's attention?
Maybe a way to refine the question is, when do you know to give up on marketing something?
Great question.
When is it so far in the past and when is it so beyond reaching an audience that it's just like, move on?
I think that you can mark anything,
Can.
that you can market anything, anytime, even if it's already been marketed, I think that you can pick it up and market it again a year later.
Yep.
So you kind of got to find a way to get excited about it. Because if you're not
Yeah.
excited about it, then why would anyone else be? And I think there's a really fun element of the creation process where you get to come up with cool ways to repackage a single or an
Yeah.
album that maybe got delayed. And it might be old to you, but don't forget, no one else has really heard
That's
it.
right, yeah, it's on
And
its
then
own.
it's like,
Yeah.
and then I think that's sort of the thing that a lot of bands struggle with, and the thing I always think about when I see famous people playing like their hit, I'm like, how many fucking times have they played this song?
Oh, yeah.
I feel so bad for them.
That
But
age-old
like everyone in the crowd loves it and they're all over it, and then maybe they feed off that energy of other people's love for it.
Yeah.
So, but
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's okay to shelf something. Like if you're, and then there's a delay, and I think it's okay to just kind of quietly shelf that for now, instead of doing a marketing plan of the same images or the same message for like 8 months. Like I worked on a music video with a Vancouver band, and that music video didn't come out until 1.5 years later. It was so frustrating to sit on it because it was, oh no, it wasn't a music video, it was an album cover. And so what they did in the meantime was they had all of these production delays, and this actually happens so much. It is so common for me to do a photo shoot and not be able to release those images a year later. And if they're really good images and I just have to sit on them for a year, it's like pain, torture. But it's very, very, very common for that to happen in music. And so I think instead of drawing out the process, like, hey guys, new album, just kidding, new album, just kidding, it's coming next week. I think just go silent. Just don't talk about that new album. Just pick it up when you're ready, and then develop a new plan when it's getting a little closer to when you're going to release it. That's just a very tangible answer to that question.
one thing that sort of personally fascinates me in terms of the world that we're living in now with a lot of online digital communication is this whole idea of shouting into the void, right? And just the
Yes.
mass amount of music and noise that you have to break through to get the attention, the fans, the listeners, right? The likes,
Yeah.
whatever. And I don't know, I think there's not really a proper answer to the question, but one of the things I was hoping to get both of your insight on is once you have your narrative and your image dialed in, how and when should you spend money on marketing campaigns? And like spending money on digital marketing campaigns as an independent artist or label, it can be effective if you know how to use the tools properly.
Yes.
But what does that look like? And do you break the bank on giving Google your money or what does it look like?
No.
Yeah.
I feel with you.
Well, I was just gonna say, it's not actually that expensive to do online advertising. Like a little campaign here, like to boost posts, that's not too bad. I mean, I suppose after a little while it adds up and everything is really expensive right now, so I realize that every little dollar counts, but overall, boosting posts online is not gonna kill you. And it might get you a few new followers and people going to your website and stuff. I think that PR, if you have the budget, is and maybe you guys, I think it's a really good use of dollars if you can afford it.
And it depends on who the PR person is.
Right.
And the relationship. If you can properly, accurately communicate, or if they're in touch enough with your work, like it's not find any PR person. You have to develop a relationship with them because I absolutely know people that, like, I agree, PR over the boosted posts 100%. If you're gonna save your money for something, if you don't have a label that's able to support that, and you're doing it independently, screen people, spend the time to screen people. I know that there's the urgency sometimes to want to get that relationship, but screen them, make sure you have a great relationship with them, that they're clear on what your vision is. I agree completely, but like I would personally take it with a grain of salt. Save up the money you would spend on a boosted post. The ROI on a good PR person over boosted posts will go a long way.
How much does PR cost?
In a few thousands, yeah, I would say
So
good,
it's a lot.
good PR.
Yeah.
the thing is the return on investment, right? Like if you're thinking about how many boosted posts you're going to test on your own, and you get to pick the target, you get to pick all these things, how much of that is accomplished through community building? How much of that is accomplished through word of mouth because you have great work and you're a great person and you have, like you're speaking for yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is expensive. Back in my day, it was about $1,500, and people were just, putting away money from their tips and stuff and using it for that. And I gotta say, it worked. You got people in print, you got people on digital platforms, maybe you got an interview on a local radio station, you got people speaking about you, and even if it's the same blurb that appears on Exclaim, CBC Music, any of your local publications, that all it is its eyes, right? And those publications will put you in their Instagram feed or their TikTok or their Twitter feed. So it does go a long way. I have seen 3 hands, and I want to know you. So you had one, but if you're done, no?
Maybe sort of along the vein of your question. But I guess there's totally 3 different marketing worlds that I live in, a very structured, institutionalized,
Yes.
every image has to be reviewed, and then there's kind of a more fun, with our festival, and then there's the band. But one of my pressing questions is maybe information overload. You're part of posting, or the pressure or the interest is thanking everybody, that photographer or that venue or that group. It's how you kind of build relationships and appreciate.
Yeah, there is an online community.
Yes.
And then it gets reposted, and yes.
The liner notes of the photo.
Yeah.
Right?
So the question is the IRL, that timing piece. Is it real weird to 8 months after you play some festival or do anything, you're like, oh yeah, here's some photos,
100%
and
no. 100%
that was a great time, and I just,
No, that's not weird at all.
No.
when you were asking the depth, I guess I'm.
Do you feel, because it is overwhelming, it's like you can't, is it that to do all the work and to be an artist and to create all the work and then to have to thank the people who along the way every single time, it is exhausting, right?
More in the moment, I just don't, I think I'm of the not instant generation.
I post old stuff,
And think
just
about that.
Just because something is I made it or it's from 8 months ago doesn't mean that it doesn't have merit. Some of my best work is from years ago, and I'll post it on Instagram tomorrow with no problem. And just being hey guys, I was reminded of this shoot, it was really fun.
Messaging.
Yeah. The messaging of that. I think that with social media, we think that everything has to be in the moment. It has to be kind of now, but I kind of think it's nice when it's not, sometimes.
Too lost in the moment.
You guys talked earlier about kind of the rawness and wanting your fans to be able to see that stuff, but obviously for the press releases, we want to have very tailored images.
Yeah.
Where's the balance between, posting oh, hey, I did this cool thing today with just your back phone camera versus those really high quality kind of videographers that you paid for and stuff like that?
Yeah. You should have both. So for me, the question is, where should those things live? I think that the really raw front camera, hey guys, what's up? Rolling into the studio today, that should be Instagram stories, TikTok, maybe make a reel if it's fun, put some music to it. But then you also have this reserve of professional, really cool photos that go out to magazines and that go out in press releases and that do absolutely make their way onto social media. Yeah.
I agree. There was another one. Reach out there.
Yeah.
Hat next.
Oh, sorry. I kind of just had a question. How do you find that balance when your authentic music self is a bit different from your authentic personal self? Music.
What's your handle?
Sorry.
I'm curious.
I musically say you write this really emotionally charged alternative rock which is personal to who you are and authentic to who you are. But personally, you're kind of just a guy who likes beer hockey and golf. How do you find that?
Many things can be true.
Yeah.
Why can't those
find that balance?
Well, they coexist. They're in you already. There it is, right?
But
So
have
yeah,
you
again,
considered setting up separate channels too, like
There,
for your own?
business
Because
account.
like I think it's important to draw boundaries for yourself and you know where you exist in your real life, and
if
then
it's that hard,
your
I think
artist
it's
self
yeah.
is
Yeah.
you know your own a different handle.
So is that the case though? Because I have a podcast and I have music and I just fuck around and do stuff in Calgary. And all of that is just on mine and it's named after music and I'm like, well, that's my authentic self, so
Then
whatever.
that's awesome. And if
Yeah.
you're comfortable doing that, then you can use the platform as like a multi-tier
Do you have a link
thing.
tree?
It might.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, then that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
You're there. Yeah.
And there's
What's your
Sans at
podcast
the top and Ricker Razor Sharp, by the way. And you can
nice.
see me do whatever, probably just
Yeah.
drinking a pint or also making a big deal out of some song or whatever.
I'm the same. I funnel everything through my personal/business account. I just don't, I'm a very open book, and I think that everything that goes on my social media, I mean, I don't share my entire life on there, I do keep things private, but the things that I do share on there authentically funnel back into my life as a photographer and as an artist and as someone who struggles with imposter syndrome sometimes, and also someone who really loves fashion and music and old architecture. These are all things that I think come back to making me and my brand, and that funnel back into that. Yeah.
I totally hear what you're saying. I think what you got me thinking about though is like from the perspective of a promoter and or maybe a person who plays in a band and then a person who lives their own real authentic life offline. And if you have a band and you have a show coming up and then the promoter's like, post about the show. Like, why aren't you promoting the show through your own personal channels? Or, you know, and then it's expected, you know, for those lines to sort of cross and blur. And then all of a sudden you're like compromising your own like personal like online presence by just, you know, filling your feed with a bunch of promotional stuff. And that like, I feel like something I personally struggle with. I'm like, oh, I don't want to pollute, you know, the, I guess the like,
There's a fine
story
line.
feeds with
I
just
think
self-promotional
Yeah.
stuff.
Sorry, I'm going to.
I just want to say one quick thing. I think that if you aren't comfortable doing you as an all-encompassing brand, then have a separate band account, have a separate music account, have a separate photography account, and keep your beer pong life or your fashion or architecture life in another account.
I'm also curious though about like, and to get your take here on like preaching to the converted versus like gaining new traction and new fans and new eyeballs on the stuff that you're creating, whether it's a single or a new press photo that you want people to see. How do you get that stuff out
How do you
there?
get the traction?
And you know, I'm curious like for all the bands and the artists in the room, like what is your experience with that and how have you had success and where have you seen failures? Does anyone want to share?
Well, it's sort of similar, like related question, I guess. It's like, I just want to know your thoughts on posting just for the sake of staying relevant and so that like you get people to see your stuff all the time when they open up Instagram. But maybe it's like I stream on Twitch and I post a lot of my clips on my Instagram of just like song clips. But like to me, like it's just normal, it's not that special, it's kind of boring maybe. But to stay relevant, like I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say there's the dopamine hit that you might get from seeing a like come through, and then there's the testing it to see how far it can go, right? And from a marketer, like if you have a hat, marketing hat, it's like I'm doing this to test out the viability of this particular piece of work, right? Versus maybe I genuinely want to share something. Like I think that social media, we do kind of cloud that part where it's like effective, or is it like I got dopamine from that? You know what I mean? Is it actually getting traction to your point, right?
Sure.
I do want to call out like the idea of instant fame, like the zero to hero, right? That there's this kind of thing that some of us feel we can chase, and it's not sustainable. it's not a sustainable way to operate from a marketing standpoint, and it's not sustainable in being authentic. So I maybe I'm saying that for myself, but like I look at an artist who did see slow growth, bit of a pop artist now. Her name is Luna Lee, and all she did, she was a bedroom harpist, and then she was a multi-instrumentalist, and this caught on. And she was doing the same thing that you're doing. She was just authentically posting things that she's working on, workshopping. She's an excellent string player, and it just caught on, and now she's a touring musician. And that was just somebody being authentic. And it wasn't a one-hit wonder on TikTok. You know, you hear these kind of nightmare stories of people who blow up on TikTok with the one song, but they actually have a huge repertoire. People go to their concert, but they leave after the one song, right? Steve Lacy. Steve Lacy. And he's not being less authentic, but by the powers that be in the social media realm, that didn't create sustainability for his tour. That's not the experience he wants as an artist, to see people leaving after that TikTok song. It's the TikTok song. My God, right?
For the content you're posting though, I think it's also interesting to look at what platform is it living on and how are you presenting it on that platform. Like the same way you write a Twitter post would be different from an Instagram grid caption, or how the video lives in a reel or a TikTok. You know, finding different ways to edit it and get creative, or, you know, create some kind of brand identity. If it is a Twitch post, I would say you know, boom, Twitch post of the week, you know, but mix it up with other content too. And yeah.
I guess I have heard that term before, like staying relevant. Like, do you need to be posting every day to stay relevant? And I guess that comes back to your question, Glenn, of how are you engaging new people? How are you getting more followers? How are you getting more people listening to your work? How are you know what I mean?
Do you go on Instagram and follow a bunch of people and hope they follow you back? Or do you go and play a show live and go, everyone pull out your phones now? So when I see people do that, I half cringe, and then I have respect. I wonder how many followers they got.
How do you...
I have a question. It might not necessarily be along the lines of how to remain authentic, but when it comes to actually portraying the image that you want to put out there in the world, there is so much censorship when it comes to what you're putting out there. Like, is there something that we should stay away from just to make sure that you don't get shadow banned? Because I can guarantee you I'm hella shadow banned. No matter, you would post a little bit of news or a little bit of coarse language or whatever, and by comparison.
How do you know you're shadow banned? I've never understood
The Instagram algorithms have changed dramatically. So my posts that used to get 300, 400, 500 likes are getting 30 now. It's not shadow banning, it's Instagram has literally changed the way that they're doing things.
Right,
Makes
so
it
then do
very
you
hard
put
to
a
use
small
content.
paid campaign
Yeah.
behind the post?
You
Do you go
can.
on back end business manager and be like, I'm gonna buy some likes today? And then
I
are those
just,
people real?
between the beta pushing and the boosting pushing, it just makes me wonder how much is actually you're buying.
100%.
Where does it
You
translate?
have the pay to play online now.
That's the design.
Yeah.
By design.
It's kind of
So
but-
with the community, if you can have a real community, then
And speaking of community, one thing that I've personally seen a lot of success in when it's a band or a brand or business is this collaboration, the act of community and creating community within your space. Whether it's partnering with a restaurant or, we're right now working on this thing with Taco Fino, a restaurant in Vancouver, where we're bringing artists in to make tacos. And just us sort of piggybacking on their following and then giving a platform to the artist and then they, and it's sort of this sort of synergy that you dial into, and that's maybe not authentic to
So
everyone.
go buy $25 in tacos instead of boosting up.
Yeah, I like to spend
Just kind of pick up what Myrtle was saying earlier about, posting stuff to stay relevant and just getting things out there. Just like my question. No, I haven't. Give me 2 seconds.
yeah, so take your time.
Somebody once said to me that, the people who can't do what we do find it very fascinating. Can you post things that you might think is boring, but if as long as it's aligned with your practice, do you guys kind of agree that it's possible that could build attraction?
All the time.
Yeah.
And aren't you always kind of testing the water? You're
Yeah.
oh shit, that
Yeah,
really
test the water, like, this
that one flubbed. maybe people don't really want to see that, or if it gets buried in the algorithm. To me, the word algorithm and like it's all a mystery, you know. But I think you just do, you know, if you're authentic and be yourself, then eventually I think the traction sort of comes.
I do, just go there 1 second, I want to kind of string some lights on a different perspective maybe than simply social media too, is what do you want them to do? What do you want an audience to do? What do you want to do? Are you creating work to express something? You turn back into that a little bit. And I know artists that have the ability to do many things. They can teach what they do. They're backup, they're session players. They can do a bunch of things. They're thriving artists in multiplicitous ways. But if you are an artist and you want a record deal, like, is the purpose to get a record deal? Is the purpose to go on tour? Is the purpose, like, what is it that you want out of this creation that you're making? Like, maybe it's an album. What do you want? How do you want it received? Think of, like, there's the part of us that want to use social media personally, and there's a part of us that wanted to grow our career. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that, like, I think I'm hearing, how do I strike a balance? Like, in everything, all the questions are like, where's the threshold? What's the sweet spot? And it's truly about, like, where you want to go. You want to be a thriving artist? Do you want one audience? You want to go on tour with this one album and make another album and do it all over again? Are you a solo artist that wants, an artist in a band that wants to break out of your band and become a solo artist? Like, those motivations change throughout your career. That's going to be unique to each of you. So I just, red two.
So it is 5 after 2,
Oh, wow.
so we're probably gonna like wrap it up. But if there's like anything that we haven't touched that anyone sort of wants to bring up, or one final question, it's been really fun chatting through all this.
Yeah.
What's up?
Can I just ask you guys, I think we're all struggling with the word authentic because for everybody here it will mean something different. So
Yes.
if you had to summarize it in one word or one phrase. For you guys.
You. No, I don't, giving it some thought. One word.
Like mine would be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. The art of being yourself and honest.
Yeah,
You creating a narrative that you actually stand behind is what I kind of went in thinking about.
Yeah.
People see bullshit. They're like,
What's
man, this artist is such a poser, like Youngblood or something. And all that.
What, last one? I don't know. It's 5 out of it. What are they gonna do?
I was just wondering if you all have any quick tips on perhaps like when you're marketing yourself in like a new environment. For instance, my band earlier this year we played in Toronto, and I lucked out that had a friend that worked at a WT radio station, and I got in contact with him, and we got like our track played on a bunch of shows through that. So it was nice to have an organic connection in a different city. If you don't have that connection, how do you authentically, reach out to just like a new city and be like, trying to sell myself a little bit, like my band's never played here before. We're playing a 20
I was saying for this.
2 people we come out.
Because I've had to do this in my photography career. So last year I was looking for an agent in Toronto, so I have an agent now who represents me in Toronto, and I just had to start cold emailing people.
Yes.
I've done that my whole life. I've cold emailed creative directors, hey, like give me work. And my philosophy on this is the worst thing that someone can say to you is no. No is not that bad, because you're just gonna go out and eventually someone else is gonna say yes. But they're not gonna send you an email back that says, you know what, your music is fucking shit. They're not gonna say that. They're not gonna say like, who are you? Like, you have terrible style, you're ugly. They're not gonna say any of these things.
It's not you.
The worst thing they're gonna do, is they're just like not gonna email you back, probably. And that's okay. You just go on to the next one. There's a wall between you.
But
You know
Google
what I mean?
is so great this way. Like, we're so connected, and I love what you said earlier, Glenn, about collabos. Like, even Venus Fest, we want to bring artists to Toronto. We're also struggling with funding. We're doing this weird economic thing. Mm-hmm. And like, we actually talk to other music festivals in other areas in Ontario and in Quebec, and we want to partner with them. Yeah. We might not know who they are yet. We try to just seek them online or on Instagram or on TikTok, and usually on Instagram, and we reach out, we're like, hey, we'd like to bring this artist are they of interest to you? Maybe we double up on flying them out, and then like it's like we're sharing the resources and the collaboration.
Yeah, and it's kind of the exciting thing about it. If
Email.
you're going into
Yeah.
a new market, like you get to look at it and do a little bit of research and like, what are the record stores there? What are other bands
Yeah.
there that are existing and doing something cool? Strike up a friendship with them. If you have a say in who gets to open the show or join the bill,
Yeah.
get the local people to help you, create the groundswell in those local markets. And I think it really, even comes down to doing old school like marketing techniques where you maybe send some copies of your album
Yeah.
to the record stores and say, hey, do you want to put these out for free? Hang up this poster, pick up the phone and call them. You get usually a lot more like movement and progress through like actual conversations with people.
Yeah.
And even like, for instance, when we do the South by Southwest showcases every year, I'm always like, man, how do we break through the noise of these thousands of bands playing? And like, last year we did a hip hop and R&B showcase. I found all of these like hip hop and R&B artists who lived in Austin, and I was like, do you want to sponsor this showcase? You can come out, you can DJ, play, in between the bands and stuff. And because of that, like, it became this like sort of like cultural groundswell of local talent being introduced to Canadian talent, and so many people built relationships and had a great experience through that. But it's like fun, like trying to like making friends, making like community.
Yeah.
I think
And get it off
playing
social
into
media.
that. Yeah.
Okay, one more question and then.
Sorry, yes, so this is Sylvia from Notas de Cuatro. I have more like a practical question. I'm actually building a marketing plan right now, and I want to do that for like a full year. Is there any places where I can access like good templates, maybe even if, I have to change a lot of things? And if not, then can you maybe suggest a person that can actually do that? And how much would it cost to actually create like a 1-year marketing plan for my project?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't have an answer for that, but if you would like to be in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll find each other.
Yeah, wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, it's like the question of do you do it independently or
You
do you
just
go
did
through
what
an
we told
agency? Like,
him to do.
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone for being a part of this.
What did we match today to make sure that?
Thanks to Music Calgary and enjoy the rest of the conference.